guys, it's Susie for Bello's Designs. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I made this background. Now recently I posted this piece and I had so many comments asking me, how did you do the background? What colors did you use? Wow, how do you do that? So today I'm going to show you, because this is one of the simplest backgrounds you will ever do, and you don't need any experience to be able to do this piece. So if you're a beginner or a seasoned crafter, it's just so simple. All right, so for the products I'm going to use today, I'm using the distressed oxides. I'll be using squeezed lemonade, pick raspberry, peacock feathers, wilted violet, and blueprint sketch. Now, I'm also going to be using blending brushes. You can use whatever it is you like to blend with, but make sure, especially if you're new and you're not familiar with oxides, you have a separate set of brushes just for your oxides. Why? Because oxides are a blend of ink. They're a regular water-based ink or dye base, but they're also a pigment base mixed together with the oxide. So you could take a regular brush and put it in your oxide pad. It's perfectly fine. But if you take your oxide brushes and put them into your water-based inks, like your regular distressed ink pads, it will ruin your ink pad, okay? So that's why you want brushes just for your oxides, right? I'm also going to be using a fan brush, some water, and multifarious card. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start. I'm going to be showing you on a scrap of paper today. So I'm going to start with the squeezed lemonade, and we're just going to randomly place this onto our card. Okay, wherever you want. Don't worry if your blend is not smooth or if you have lines in it, it's okay, because we're going to be throwing a bunch of different inks on it, water, you name it. All right, so now we're going to move to our picked raspberry. And again, just coming in randomly. And don't worry if you get something like that where it's darker right there, it's all going to blend in. You can do these with any color you want. Mix up your inks. If you have other water reactive inks, such as your Elements inks or your regular distressed inks, play with those too. Do a combo. You never know what you're going to end up with, and everyone is going to be different. So if you've got a bunch of scrap paper laying around, perhaps just try out different color combinations. See what works for you. You have a bunch of ink on your mat? Try throwing some of that on there. Now, because I do a lot of ink blending, quite often I will have pieces of scrap sitting on my desk or by my desk. And so when I get done, I usually take and just mist my board down and smush my paper into it to pick that ink up. And you can end up with some really great backgrounds doing that. I'm going to throw a little bit of the wilted violet in here. And this pad is really wet. Don't need much. You can throw them over the top of each other. Just whatever you like, wherever you like. Okay. So now the fun begins. Now you can see I've got a bunch of ink on my mat right there. I'm just going to take my misting bottle, hit it with a little bit of water. Grab my cup of water here. Just get my brush wet. And I'm just going to pick that up. And now we're just going to flick it onto our piece. Now, the heavier your ink is, the more reaction you're going to get to it. And now you can see those colored splatters throughout the card. Now, the key to this is let it dry. But for today's purposes, I'm going to hit it with my heat tool, and we're going to dry it really quick and move on. Okay, now I'm just going to clean this off my board really quick. Now I'm going to go with the picked raspberry, and I'm just going to place a little down on my mat, do the exact same thing. Just going to mist it a little bit just to get it moving. Stick my brush in some water, pick that up, and flick. Now, the harder you hit your brush, the bigger your splats are going to be. If you want little splats, hit it lightly. Okay. And now I'm going to wipe off my board yet again, and we're going to dry it. And you can keep doing this with any colors you want to. As many as you want or as little as you want. All right, we're going to go with just a little bit of peacock feather. Again, just getting that moving. My wet brush. And we're just going to flick it. Just that simple. And again, drying it. All right, there we go. Now, you can keep playing with these. Like I said, I've always got scrap laying next to my desk or off to the side. So when I have leftover ink, I just grab my papers and start mopping them up. And you can see it does make a mess. But you just keep layering those inks up, and eventually you get a whole different background. And it's all from just cleaning up your mat. Now, this is another background I did using the same technique. The only difference with this is I had extra ink left on my mat. So I misted that down. I smushed this into it so it softened all those colors up. Then I took my finger and just stuck it in some water and just touched it. And you end up with these lighter, like orbs almost. And then I decided to play a little more. So I had ink down on my mat. I wet my finger, stuck it in the ink, and ended up with these bigger spots. So like I said, just play with your inks. You never know what you can create with it. Mix them up with your other inks. Okay, now I'm going to show you something else you can do with this background. Now, to change it up just a little more, you can do what's called the Joseph's coat. And all that is taking a stencil. This one happens to be the Lavinia Leaf Trail stencil. And I'm just going to pop this down. And now I'm going to grab my blueprint sketch. Now you can use any colors you want. For this technique, you're going to want a darker color. So you could use black soot, or depending on what your piece is, maybe if you're doing things for the holidays, you know, go with a dark brown or a burgundy, whatever colors you like. All right, so now I'm just going to take this, and you want to come in heavy-handed, and that's also why it's important that it's dry before you do this, because you don't want to be tearing your paper. Just hold your stencil down good. If you get a little ink on your fingers, that's okay. Because in this case, it doesn't matter if you get inky marks on your card, because we've already done that. We've already put inky marks all over it. It just adds a little more to it. So I'm just going in heavy-handed, just to give it a different look. And there we go. Now, I'm not going to do the entire piece because I don't want you bored watching me blend ink. But what a great effect, and it's just that simple. Now, here's a card that I made using a piece just like this. I used the large Rory on this from Lavinia Stamps and the Willow, using the exact same colors that I showed you here. So super simple, but how effective are these backgrounds? And you don't need any kind of skill to do it. And they all turn out different. Now, just by changing the way I put my ink on, this is another piece I came up with, using the exact same colors. The only difference is I just moved the ink in circles. So, super simple, super effective backgrounds. And it doesn't matter if you're a seasoned pro or if you're a beginner, anyone can do these. So I really hope that you take the time, play with your inks, see what you come up with. Grab those scraps of paper. When you're doing a mop-up, just play with them. So much fun. Now, I'm going to give you one more tip. It's always fun. You can end up with yet another background when you're using your stencils. And I know you've probably seen this before. So again, I'm going to grab another scrap of card, and I'm going to take my misting bottle. And I've got a lot of ink on here. So I'm just going to mist my stencil. Just lightly. Helps if you hit the stencil when you do it, which I missed it the first couple of times. And just press that down. You don't need a lot of water to move that ink. You can do this with your Element, your Distressed, any of your water-based inks. Just press it in. All right. And you end up with that. Now, how pretty is that? And all you're doing is cleaning your stencil. All right. So we're going to set that aside. I'm going to share yet another tip with you. Now, I'm just going to mist this down. Normally, I would run this underwater. But for today's purposes, we're just going to do it right on my mat here. So now I have a lot of water on my stencil. I've moved that ink off. I'm just going to dry off my board here a minute. And grabbing my stencil. Now my stencil is wet. You don't want to put a wet stencil over water reactive ink, but you want to use the stencil again right away. Here's the tip. Take a roll of paper towels that's almost gone. You could do this with a new roll too. I just keep this one on my desk all the time. I don't use the towels off of it. Why? Because I'm going to use that to dry my stencil. Now, if you have these stencils, you know how delicate they are. Or if you have the Sweet Poppy stencils, which are metal and sharp, you know if you've ever tried drying one, you take a chance at cutting yourself. You use paper towels, you're going to get little wads of paper towel everywhere. This saves you all the way around. So now just by rolling this over your stencil, you're not going to snap that stencil. You're going to have a nice dry stencil. And you can take this and use it immediately. Now it's dry, I can do this all over again. All right? So there's a little tip for you. Again, I hope you play with your inks. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you give it a try. And again, just have fun. I'd like to invite you to our 2 Facebook groups. We have Del Bello's Designs Lounge, where you can post all your Lavinia makes. We also have Del Bello's Designs a la carte, where you can post all of your Sweet Puppy Stencil, Nellie's Choice, Cardio, using any of the products that Del Bello's Designs sells. All the items I used today are listed in the description box down below, along with 2 links to the 2 Facebook groups. So, I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, stay crafty.